Hello, very good evening. We have been talking about PHP, and in today's PHP lecture, we will be talking about post and get methods or post and get superglobal variables that are used in PHP to send the data to the server and receive the data. How basically they work and what is their functionality, what is URL encoding, and which situation allows us to use post and get in which conditions. My name is Dr. Zeeshan. If you're here for the first time, don't forget to subscribe this channel, hit that bell icon so you receive these tutorials regularly. Let's begin. Now, post and get, basically these are two variables, if you can say, or two methods by which data or the form data is transferred from an HTML file to your server. Okay, and once they do that, basically they encode your form data in a special way, which is called URL encoding. What happens is that it uses, for example, value is name is equals to its value. Okay, in other words, it forms a what we call associative array. Okay, so and then it uses an ampersand to separate if there are multiple values. Okay, is equals to value 2. So now here what has happened, this is a type of URL encoding in which the value name 1 is equals to value 1. So your text field name is equals to your text field value, and the second text field name is equals to the value in that second text field, and the third text field, fourth text field, or column box, or whatever data is in your form is basically encoded in this particular manner with your URL. When each value is basically represented, separated by and then represented and separated by and again. This is a type of associative array, in other words. So we use this name as a key element and we access its data or value, as you call it. Okay, so if I will show you 4 more examples as we go along. Obviously, this is encoded within our URL. So in URL encoding, if we talk, there are basically 2 mechanisms of doing that. So for example, we start with something called form in our HTML, and we create form and close this and backslash form. Okay, so because these get and post method typically work with the form. So in this case, we specify action now. And something called method. Okay, so this method initially, let's just use something called get. Okay, so now we have a get method available. Now what is get? Get basically typically is used to, again, nowadays again it can be used to send the data, but typically it was used to get the data from a server as well. So you can use a get method to post the data as well as receive the data. For both purposes it is used now, but initially typical purpose of get was to receive the data, to get the data from a server, and if in case if you are posting the data on a server, you would use a method called post. Okay, so this is the method. This basically means that once you click on the submit button within your form, your data is sent via get. Now get had few properties, few attributes. Okay, let's just complete the code, or let me just define the get first. Okay, so what get basically does is that get method produces a long string that appears in your server logs in the browser's location. The get method is also restricted to send up till 1024 characters only. So you have to be very careful with that. So because get method, the data is encoded in your URL, the maximum number of characters that it can send would only be limited to 1024. Second, for example, if I use quotations here, how the get method work? If this is, for example, my local localhost / test.php. Now the way the get method works, that it encodes, it gives a question mark first, then it will write name 1 is equal to value 1. If there are more than one value, separated by AND operator, then then again name 2 is equals to value 2, then again AND operator, name 3 is equals to value 3. This is actually the way a URL is sent, and you can read this data on a URL. That's the thing. And when we say 1024 is the limit, means 1024 characters after the question mark, this is the limit. Okay, so basically you cannot send a large amount of data on your server. Again, and this data is actually visible on your browser. So sometimes when you click on a website and you see a strange characters appearing on your browser, which actually one in the URL, and the string changes while it's loading, it shifts the pages, the characters on your string change, especially when you access emails. That's because they're using get method, and URL encoding is basically visible on your browser. So this is what happens in get method. Once we use this, basically now let's just create, for example, a name colon, and we give an input. Okay, input type can be text, and its name I will just give txt enemy name. Okay, a simple form, nothing more complicated. And in this case I can give age is equals to input, and then type again can be text, and this shall be txt age. Okay, and then finally input, and the type would be submit, and that's it. Okay, we don't need to give the name, but let's just give it submit submit. So now a submit is basically type of button that automatically holds the key, that once you click on the submit button, it will go and load this form data. And the form data, it is that send the data via get method and send the data to action. Now in previous classes in form data, we used an external PHP. It what we call it, loaded an external PHP. In this case, if you want to read the data of a form within the same page, basically what we need to do is we need to write a PHP code inside it. PHP bracket start and PHP bracket close. So in other words, because this is HTML, remember we can write the PHP code anywhere we want for any particular action or value or attribute for that matter. So in this case, instead of writing directly a file name, I just wrote by PHP this thing. And here I will use something called $_post, or I think get PHP _ self. Now this is again another what we call string, a query variable, a global variable that basically represents that load my same page. Instead of taking this page to another page on a server, it will read its own page and try to process that data, if it makes a little bit sense. Okay, so if you want the same page to load and read your form data, basically this is a small trick that we use. We call a specific variable which is called PHP self, which will reload itself rather than loading a separate page. Okay, so within the PHP tag, obviously. So once this means that once I click on the submit button, it will reload my page. So let me save it. I have saved it as post.php in my PHP class folder within the my XAMPP folder. So in XAMPP htdocs in PHP class, I have this saved. I've saved this file already. PHP class. I give an example. For example, it's called post.php, and I load this page. So we have this variable. Now again, this is a string, which I think we left out in this corrector value. Let me just comment this. Zip. This is my. I forgot how we give this thing, right? I think this was the way. This was the way, right? HTML comment. Sorry, if I rarely I use HTML comments. Anyway, so let's just refresh this page. So this comment is gone. So now we have something called post and get. In PHP name, I give my name, and age, for example, we give the age and hit a submit button. See, the same page is loaded. But now check the URL. Now the URL is absolutely interesting. In URL, you will see post. There is a question mark here. Within, and then there's a text name. The text name is actually, if I decrease this so we can read it, please. So text name is basically what we have been talking about. Text name is this text name, the name of your input field. Okay, so this is in the name one that I mentioned here. This name is automatically used as a text field name. So text field name, and then whatever value we inserted in our text field, Zeeshan plus BHATTI. Now plus is there because of space. So there was a space in my string. So wherever there is a string, this get method automatically encoded the space with a plus sign. Brilliant, right? So you don't have to worry about that many things. So this is Zeeshan Birdy is equals to text field name. This is what happens when you use get method. Then and text age is equal to 42 and submit is equal to name. Alright, so basically your data is being sent like this in URL. This is what happens when you use a get method. URL encoding happens. Your data that you insert in your form is sent via your URL encoding to the server for every time you do that. But now obviously there's a password here. That password will be visible on your URL. So that is why it's absolutely essential that if you are sending a confidential or personal data, do not use get. That's why sometimes we say get is used to retrieve the data from a server. but to send the data we use a post method. Now let's read this data. In order to read this data we need to work with this PHP file. Okay, so now we come into my code, we write the PHP and question mark close. Now here we need to read this data that is coming through our URL to the server. So how do we do that? And again, this data is coming through get method because we have specified get here. In order to read the data from your server in a get method, we use a method called $_get. Okay. Now, in order to read the self data, what we do is we had used in previous class, for example, variable called name is equals to $_get, and then bracket stars quotations txt and name. Okay, and then let me just give semicolon here. That this is why we call this as a global variables. Okay, they are super global variables. In other words, sometimes the word is used super global because they are accessible throughout your system, throughout your browsers. This is the text field name. Now this is the text field name that we gave this field. From here this becomes an associative array. So as in the form of associative array, we have a key and its value. So we use this key within our array symbol as associative array to retrieve the data. Now this data is automatically saved in this $_get variable. Whatever data is being sent through URL, this data as an associative array form is automatically saved in this variable. That is why we call them super global variables, because the data is automatically accessed and saved in these variables. All you need to do is just use this as an array. Understand this is an array that $_get, a default variable already created, already contains a variable value which has been passed through your URL. All you need to do is remember the text field name or the name or the key, which is in this case text field. It will read that data and save it on our, Control Z. It reads that data and saves it on our $name variable. Now, if you do that here right now, or this is typically way of reading it, this is basically what we call the global variable is. It will automatically hold the value which is saved in our browsers or the URLs. Whatever data is being sent to the URL is automatically saved in this get variable. Okay, we do not need to do anything here. And this variable value text name is basically what we get from our text field name. Okay, so this is saved here. Now, the problem here is that because we are using this method in first of all PHP, as soon as we run the PHP, it will give us a problem. Okay, so as soon as we go to our PHP and refresh it, you see undefined index, text name is not defined. So basically what's happening is that it's not an error, it's a warn notice. Okay, so it's noticed like a warning that something is wrong, not an in form of error, but it doesn't understand. That's because if you read the get name text field, we have run the code initially, and as PHP is running, it reads the code line by line. This line gets executed first. When it tries to read the variable name, there is no data in get because we have yet not submitted the form. So until you submit the form, this data will have a blank, and we are trying to save the variable value in the name field. So this is noticed for that particular purpose. Okay, let's just use this variable value and now submit, and now you see the error is gone. Okay, that's because now it has that data. So what we do typically is we do not use it directly in this case because we are using the same page. We put it inside if block. Okay, if this thing semicolon. So if text name dot get, and then we give it a block echo the name is, and then we give again a dot operator and $get, and then bracket sign quotations, and then we give text name. Okay, so now what we did, we use an if conditions to evaluate a condition that check kindly that is there any data inside if, and again I've just used the variable name. This basically means if there is no data, it will automatically run null or false value, and the loop will not, body will not execute. If this is the case, what should happen now? Okay, we can use the condition is equals to null or blank or whatever you want. In most cases I've tried leaving this just like this works fine as well. So even for this we can use $get $_get and bracket start bracket close and quotation marks, and then we write text age. Okay, so now basically it means that go and check the value of $text end or text age. Any one of them is null or any one of them has a value, then execute this statement. Okay, so now if I save it, this would basically mean if I refresh it, you see notice still it's variable undefined variable get. why undefined variable get txt get, okay, dollar get, this one, underscore, and refresh. Now the name is Zeeshan. I think this is from the previous time we submitted the form. So if I refresh it now and we get these two errors, notices that these two variables are left blank. So just for ignore these two right now, and we give the name, we give the age, click on submit. The name is Zeeshan. Okay, and now the same data can be filled on the text field. This is basically get method. So it basically presents the data on your browser. We can give another statement here. For example, echo your age is dot dollar underscore get. Sorry, that's the last time the same error that we did, and it's called txt age, and it will print the age. And sometimes what we do is, if you are calling the PHP from within own self, we use a statement called exit. So if this condition becomes true, print these two statements and exit, and it will not show me the remaining of the PHP, okay, control or remaining of the HTML. So in this case, for example, if I come back into my code, enter, we get an error. Ignore these two errors right now. And for example, I gave it a different name, I gave it a different age, I click submit. Now you see this only output is generated and the remaining HTML is not there. And then the same data is basically available on the text field. Okay, this is what get method does. A reciprocal to that is what post method is. A post method transfers information via HTTP headers. The information is encoded as described in case of get method. However, that method or that encoded data is not displayed on the URL. That is one of the most key features of post. The data is not displayed like it is displayed on the browser here. When you used post method here with your method form, instead of get, we use post. Now what happens, your data will not be sent on your URL. Data will not be visible on your URL. Sorry if I correct myself. Okay, so this is what happens. The data is sent by post method goes through your HTTP header. So security depends on HTTP protocols. That's one of the essential things. Okay, by using secure HTTP, you can make sure that your information is secure. So as HTTP, when we use it with the post method, we ensure that our data is secure and is sent through HTTP protocol. The PHP, the post also again has a method called, instead of get, a post variable data. So once you use post here in your variable, the same code can now be written as, but only this time post method. So wherever we had written get, we write something called POST post. We write something called POST post, and that should do the trick. Okay, so everything is same, all the code is same. The method is now post. The PHP self file is again self. So in terms of action, we gave it the code $PHP, and this time we used a variable called $_post. This again is a global variable by default declared. It will again host all the same data exactly in the same manner. However, once you execute this and press enter, again it's giving me same errors, post PHP. Don't worry about this. Let me give Ali Ahmed and age, for example, 32. Give submit, and now you see that data is not visible on the URL. That is one of the major key differences between get and post. Data is sent to the server. Get displays the data on the URL. Sometimes we might need to do that, but post will never display that. Post uses an HTTP header protocol to send the data, and you can use SHTTP to secure your data to a certain extent. So the passwords are usually sent through post method. Remaining, the code is exactly same. We use a post method here to send the data and $post method to receive the data. Okay. Hopefully it makes things clear. Finally, there is third method, something called a request. We in the method here we leave I post or get. We can do any. In method, you can use post or get anything. But once you read the method, you use a variable called request request. Okay. Instead of post, we use request request. Instead of post, we use request request. Instead of post, we use request request. What request is, it's a variable, it's again a global variable that contains both get method, post method, even cookies, even sessions, if I'm correct. Okay, it contains all this information within one variable. We have not talked about cookies yet. We will be talking about in the next few classes. Okay, so cookies are also used to send the data like post and get. but with a different format. So if you use request, you use this global variable to read the get data. You can use this request variable to read the post data. You can read this variable to read the cookies data as well at the same time. Using same request variable, super global variable, you are able to read all the data. So I use a dollar request instead of name. Method is same, pattern is same. It is again an associative array type. The data element or key basically is your input fields text field name, or whatever component you're using, its name. Okay, so if I just don't give its name, for example, and submit, because submit is just a button, we come back here, hit enter, my variable data is coming. I again give a value and I hit a submit. My data is presented, nothing is displayed. Now request basically variable can be used to get the result from the data set with both and get methods, and the data set again is uses, or this method again uses the HTTP protocol. So data is not sent via browser, the data is not displayed on the browser, okay, or not on your URL. It is encoded and it's safe to use. Advantage is that within your code you can have get method or post method. So if I use get here, the remaining resultant code remains exactly same. Now I don't need to change it. Previously from get to post I need to change here, but because I'm using request, it's like a super variable. It will host get, post, cookies, all variables together. So if I save it, I come back here, I again press enter at my post, I enter some data, click on submit, and you would see that data is presented. Now data is visible here, okay, because in form of method we used get. So because form is dependent on get method, form will display the data on URL through URL encoding. The request is basically a global variable that is able to read get data as well as post data as well as cookies data. So sometimes we tend to use just request to read all form of data together. Okay, at certain point it is also able to use a server, $_server data, which has a server request. We will talking about that in future classes, along with, like I said, cookies data. Okay, so get and post, two variable methods. Hopefully you understand them. We will be using them regularly in future classes. Again, if anything is non-confusing or confusing, leave your comments down below. I will try to assist and help you out. This is Dr. Shan Reddy. Thank you very much for watching.